see trees of green, red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies all blue, clouds all white, a bright blessed day, a dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the skies, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I see babies crying, and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than we'll ever know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Good morning. Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. So let me just say, how's the temperature out there? Okay? Okay. We'll do the three bears. Too much, not enough, just right? Just right? Okay, good. I have the heater, not the air conditioner. I have the heater set at 70, but I'm thinking with bodies in here, it should warm up. Yep. So the song. So where does that song take you when you hear that song? Any grabbers? Mark. Where? Iggy. Iggy, okay. Iggy, yeah. Izzy. I was like, Iggy Pop, Hawaii? Yeah. So takes you to your heart. Childhood. I am probably the most superficial person in this room because I'm thinking, Good Morning Vietnam. Remember Good Morning Vietnam? And there's that incredibly interesting scene where they're carpet bombing the country and they're playing this song. The juxtaposition was just chilling, and it's in me still. I mean, I remember that so well. But anyway, I love the song, but it's a beautiful song. Thank you for that. And yeah. 5 minutes in, and I've already buried myself. Pretty good. I think I set a record this morning. Yeah. I was looking at myself. I have a lot of quotes today. This could be like a reading circle, but I'll edit as we go. So good to see you all. Happy Sunday and all of that. So our theme this month is Hope on a Rope. And it's not like we're trying to strangle hope, but sometimes hope feels like it's just kind of hanging. And sometimes we're in periods where the difference between hope and optimism, it's good to remember them both. Because sometimes optimism can lead us to complacency because we just figure, it'll all work out. And hope really is an activity, it's an engagement. It's something that says, I believe in something that is greater than myself and I'm willing to apply myself. And sometimes that comes down to the stories we tell ourselves or that we are told. And so I always like to start with a question. And so the question that I have for you guys this morning and all of you is there a story or stories that served you at one point Or maybe just you were told and just accepted in your youth, and then there was a point where you realized in order to grow, you need to jettison that story. Is there a story that worked until it didn't? I guess is what it comes down to. And so, Jim, you want to take it with us? Or I'm not afraid.
You always ask questions that are not short. It's going to sound really strange given that we're at church, but for me, it's the story about God. It used to serve me, and now it doesn't. Not that I have a problem with anybody who does, but I think it also speaks to the character of Hilltop that you do create a space for everybody, even somebody who's coming from a non-religious place. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that, but more personally for me, that has become something that I share now in my art, is that I had this story growing up in a Western culture, in Western schools, where I centered myself as I thought, I'd look in the mirror and go, I must be white on the inside. And it used to be funny. I used to laugh at that, and I used to tell as a funny anecdote that because of the movies I watched and the narratives I follow, I must be white on the inside. And that was a story that I thought, if I play into that role, I'll thrive and I'll do better. And once I realized in my 30s that to not own my appearance, to compartmentalize those things, was a disservice to my being. And there's a lot of suffering involved in that. And so coming out of that and realizing that is a part of my art and a part of the story I want to share, that we all have those narratives going into our minds, that if we can embrace that, we can understand each other a bit closer and feel free to express that. So yeah, that's definitely been a big change for me.
Fabulous. Craig?
Good morning. I realized there were a lot of stories that sort of I adopted or was told, and one did boil down to this idea of God, and really what it wasn't told to me, explicitly, but just in its embodiment that God was dead. Like, there wasn't really a practice in my home, even though growing up as Catholics for a while, we attended church and just sort of dropped it. And then also, I think wow, I couldn't understand it when I was 18 and I left home and dropped out of college and just donned a backpack and started, hitchhiking and backpacking. And I had been groomed to be like a scholar, and the first one in my family to go to college and graduate, which I did not. So I think that story was about not being worthy or being enough. And I didn't understand, why am I sort of rebelling against my family when on the surface everything was good? Mm-hmm. And maybe it was that deeper belief that somehow God wasn't alive. And so it's brought me to just this place now, like sitting here with you, that God is just this vibrancy that's a part and the focus of my life. So it's interesting how it takes time sometimes to weave that story into wholeness and feel like, oh, I am okay, and that story is not now running my life. And the self-doubt I had really for decades was kind of somehow tied to that story.
Yeah. So I have two, but I'm only going to go. Maybe I'll do both. But one, I was trying to think because part of mine has to do with God too, and the God to be afraid of, because you can't love a God that you're afraid of. You really can't. You live in fear, and that was how's that making your life better? But there's another one that I'll share because it's a little lighter and open up to you guys. Is my mother, God bless her, and I love my mother, and I miss her every day. And sometimes she just said things that were just like, "That's really amazing," and one more hour of therapy, and I remember she had this saying that she used to say, where she used to say, "Always pick your friends better than you. Always pick your friends better than you," which is a fabulous solution if you're ever wondering how to feel inferior around other people. because that was the trick, right? If I'm feeling inferior, I must be on the right track. And I can remember going to therapy, and looking at my therapist's new Volkswagen at the time, this was years ago, and thinking, I bought that thing. But anyway, so that was one of those, that story that says, and the truth of it is that I'm enough. That is the truth, is I'm enough who I am, where I am with that one. But that was another one. And and then that whole thing about being afraid of God. How about you? Any takers here? A story that worked until it didn't. All right, Tim, you want to be our micer? Thank you. Yeah, get yours, because I'll want to add my 2 cents.
Well, I'm not going to be as ethereal. I'm just going to keep it real in that credit cards could get me whatever I wanted whenever I wanted it.
Amen. Yeah.
And then if I just made the minimum payment, I would eventually get out of debt.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I was a pretty rebellious youth, and there was a movie that I saw as a youth that depicted, that I could really relate to. It was Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean.
Uh-huh.
And that was the kind of character I wanted to be, until I spent a weekend in the county jail. And I actually, it's a long story, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but I actually discovered God in jail. I was on the 8th floor of the Detroit County Jail, and a dove landed on the windowsill. A light shined through the window to my feet, and a dove, I thought it was a white dove. It was probably a pigeon, but landed on the
or a
windowsill.
crow.
And it started cooing at me. And all of a sudden, all this toughness, and while I was crying at the time, actually, I wasn't really very tough at the time. I was crying, why am I here? God, I'm calling out to God, why am I here? Why am I here? And that event changed my life.
Right on.
Yeah. It changed my life.
Fabulous. All right, thank you. Yes. Anybody else? Anybody want to share a story that you had until you didn't? Karen. Why not?
Well, I was told a story, but I never believed it. So I never really absorbed it at all. I was born into a Jewish family, and in Jewish families, they're told that they are the chosen of God, God's chosen people. And I would sit there and say, well, how about everybody else? That doesn't make sense to me. And so that set me off on a lifetime of searching until I found this. Mm-hmm. So I'm very, very grateful that I resisted that story all my life. Never believed it. Still don't believe it.
Good. Right on? Yeah, and we are not the chosen people. But as Paul Woodruff says, and I love this, I talked about this last week, all people are people. All humans are humans. All humans are humans. There's no human who is not human. Right? Yeah. Anyone else?
I've got a short repeat here. Just because it's so fundamental to my trajectory is from certainty, thinking that I need to chase certainty because I was raised to believe in some sort of certainty that I'm heading toward, to now I feel like I'm on the right path if things feel uncertain, and I can find some joy and some happiness, and I'm living life when things are uncertain, which is a lot all the time. And so just changing that from chasing certainty to accepting uncertainty has been a real good shift in my well-being during the day.
Yeah. We were talking about this before service, and I was saying that the essence of idolatry is certainty. Paul Tillich, he's one of those dead Germans that I love so much, but he was a public theologian, and he used to say that the opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith is certainty. Because certainty acts as a defense, and that our faith should have some doubt in it. because otherwise we won't grow. We won't question, we won't wonder, we won't wander, we won't do whatever the case may be. All right, with that, cheery thought.
That's how it goes.
So I just have some to share too that while we're at it.
And hopefully it's relevant to the service.
So I was thinking, for a while I thought we were separate as, humanity. Like everybody's in their own corner, everybody has their own religion, and everybody's their own thing. And then, maybe some religion is better than others or whatever. And then what's constantly, like I'm realizing now, is that we're all human, and to be human is messy, and everybody has their own perspective and own way of believing God, but that it's okay. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a very Aquarian kind of idea where we're all human, we're all in this together. We're not different, but what makes us the same is our differences.
I like that. All right. And with that.
I have one more, but no.
Yeah. Good. Well, and you're welcome to share it at the coffee right after service. So with that, Craig, why don't you lead us into service this morning?
Thank you. My pleasure. Yes, so good morning. And welcome to the Hilltop Spiritual Center. And yes, I'm Craig Losey, and I'm really excited and honored to be with you. And let's just begin with prayer. So I invite you just to get comfortable in this moment where you are in this body that is really a temple. It's the temple of your soul. And so I know that when we just relax the body, perhaps there is a little bit more attunement to that stillness inside. So let your feet settle on the floor, your seat upon the chair or bench, your shoulders relax, and breathe. In the breath, we just allow the fullness of life force to enter this temple, to awaken it. And I also love on the breath to just exhale, perhaps with a little sigh. It's like this. Letting go of whatever's transpired today, or whatever's in your mind, or if you have thoughts or worries, just letting them fall away. So just know with me that there is a presence that is beautiful here today. It's everywhere always. It's all around, and it's inside of each of us. It is the presence of love, of intelligence, of peace, of truth, of all good. It is nameless, we call it God or whatever. It is just here now, and as we come together in community, in unity, its presence is more available, for there's a power in coming together, in reminding ourselves and each other. And so we just feel that presence and know that we are a part of it. That we are here is just the evidence enough that we are desired by this presence, for being given this body to be in the experience of spirit as a human being. So I'm just knowing then that the words of Reverend Guy just reveal a wisdom that we find inspiring and making us curious. And the music of Jim and Lee brings a certain joy to the heart, livening our spirit. And that coming together reminds us that we are, as Paul said, we're all in this human experience together. And so for all this, I am grateful, I give thanks, and I let it be. And so I'm glad you said about hope, Reverend Guy, sort of calling us into engagement, because that's what I thought of when I thought of this exploration this month of hope. This poem came to me by a saint and a mystic and a poet who actually spanned 3 different centuries. Kabir, from 14th to 16th century India. He was a weaver mostly, but he also wove words together. And there's this poem today that we'll hear that really, I think, calls us to be more engaged when we consider hope in our life. It's called Friend, Hope for the Guest While You Are Alive. And friend is just referring to us as humans, being embodied, yet spiritual beings on this journey. And the guest just being another word for that which is nameless, that was just God. And one thing about Kabir that's kind of interesting was he was an orphan but adopted by Muslims, but really identified with a certain path of Hinduism known as bhakti, where it's just devote your life. And yet, like us as mental scientists, he held deeply the belief that all living things, all things are the embodiment of God, and that truth resides in us. So he was very outspoken and critical of the fundamental paths of Islam and Hinduism that were prevalent in his time. And so you'll taste a little flavor of that in this poem. So it goes like this. Friend, hope for the guest while you are alive. Jump into experience while you are alive. Think and think while you are alive. What you call salvation belongs to the time before death. If you don't cut your ropes while you are alive, do you think ghosts will do it after? The idea that the soul unites with the ecstatic just because the body is rotten, that is all fantasy. What is found now is found then. If you find nothing now, in the next life, you will simply find yourself with an apartment in the city of death. If you make love with the divine now, in the next life, you will wear the face of satisfied desire. So plunge into the truth. Find out who the teacher is. Believe in the great sound. Kabir says this: when searching for the truth, it is the intensity of the desire that does all the work. Look at me, and you shall see a slave of that intensity. And so I invite you just to take a few moments as we ring the bell to go within and just contemplate our way of engaging and what we hope for, perhaps connecting with Spirit. And when you hear it a second time, we'll just be coming back. And so now the invitation is just to slowly and gently bring your awareness back to this room, and perhaps to dawn on your face a smile, evidence of your divinity.
Beautiful.
I'm going to play a song I wrote that speaks to the hope in the form that I try to create art by speaking to topics and issues that are nuanced or aren't spoken about enough. And this one is about possessiveness versus sovereignty. And I feel like there's an energy that we need to contemplate. It's about letting go, how love is letting go, and making sure that there's freedom in that love. Because all these love songs are about belonging to each other. You belong to me, I belong to you. I wanted to create a narrative that was emotionally mature. She likes to wander near and far. She likes to go where the wild things are. Oh, oh, my girl, she don't belong to me. She found the only thing she could trust, a passport and a wanderlust. Oh, oh, my girl, she don't belong to me. Everywhere she goes, I know she loves me so, but she don't belong to me. Because she's home, out on the road, all alone, in travel mode. Well, I don't take it personally. She belongs to nobody, my girl, she don't belong to me. She likes to ponder everything and take it in while traveling. Oh, oh, my girl, she don't belong to me. Belizean days and Parisian nights, Venetian waterways and northern lights. Oh, oh, my girl, she don't belong to me. Everywhere she goes, I know she loves me so, but she don't belong to me. Because she's free when she's flying beyond the sea, past the horizon, from her toes to her nose to her golden curls. She belongs to the whole wide world, my girl, she don't belong to me. Town to town and coast to coast, she tells me I'm the one that she loves the most. Oh, oh, my girl, she don't belong to me. On a plane or a train or a boat or a bus every day, I know she's choosing us. Oh, oh, my girl, she don't belong to me. Everywhere she goes, I know she loves me so, because she don't belong to me. Everywhere she goes, I know she loves me so, because she don't you don't belong to me. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jim Jones. Give it up for Jim Jones, everyone. And of course, our Reverend Dr. Guy Williams.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you, Lee. Do I want to do the announcements? I was going to do them after my talk, but I can do them now if you want me to.
Okay, either one works. I just want you to forget them because Andrea worked very, very, very hard at this.
Yes, I know she did, and I did forget them, and then I remembered that I forgot them. So I was planning on that. Yeah, but I love that song. It reminded me. There was a couple things there that just the poem from Craig, and that song. That song reminded me of. I don't remember where I read it. It was something that said. You came to rescue me at the exact moment that I realized I didn't need to be rescued. I love that line. And then, and then of course, Craig, your poetry is always just beautiful, and it reminds you of the great spiritual teaching of Harley Davidson, which basically says, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And it is the yearning, the desire that does the work, right? And that's kind of the great path that we're on all the time. It's not about getting there. It's about getting there. It's about the path that we ride. So anyway, thank you for that stuff. It has absolutely nothing to do with my talk today. It might, because I was thinking of something else. And the thought came to me when I was cleaning my office, which I think I do often, and apparently I don't do enough. I have this love frustration with my office because no matter what I do, at the end of the time that I'm doing it, there's always a mess. And books have a tendency to travel in my room. They will be on my desk, and then I will put them back, and then I'll go look for them, and they're not where they were. They're someplace else. And so I was thinking about this, because of the book thing. I was thinking, if I was to simplify my life with books, which is a better story than if you were, alone on a desert island, what book would you take? It's like, nobody's going to put me on a desert island. Wouldn't I be surprised if that happened? But I'm not assuming that it will. But I have books nonetheless. And if I was to say, what books, how would I do it? And I thought, what would be the books that would be important for me to have easy reference to all the time? So, Secret Teaching of All Ages, Bible, Tolkien's Legendarium, Moby Dick, and anything from Ken Stanley Robbins. Those would probably be the top 5, and that could change if you ask me after service. But that's my thought about where they were. But what those books all have in common is none of them are a how-to book. They're not nonfiction. They're all stories, and because I think stories are so important to who we are. And they're certainly important to how I think all of us learn. As I was talking last week, what accelerated our evolution as human beings was, as Matt was saying, was the beginning of being able to think symbolically. But how that shows up, the thing, the arcanum, the enzyme, if you would, that really began evolution for us as a species that are sitting here in this room, is that we developed language. Language is the game changer, because language is how we are able to communicate ideas, thoughts. It's through language that one person can talk to another, or to a group, or to a tribe, and share insights, share imaginations, shares instructions, truths, stories, but they're all told in stories. Our ancient ancestors told stories. I think often, Werner Herzog did this incredible film on the caves of Lascaux. I don't remember the name of the story right now. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? But anyway, Lascaux is a cave in France where these very famous cave paintings are of animals and figures and all this other kind of stuff. And I remember the first time I became aware of them was years ago on a KPBS special called Sister Wendy. She was an art person, and she talked about the caves of Lascaux because what those, and this is like 50,000 years ago that they figured that these caves were painted, and people like crawled in the hole and painted these things. It's impressionistic art. It's not literal art. They weren't trying to draw a buffalo, or they weren't trying to draw this or draw that. They were drawing them, but they weren't trying to draw them literally. They were trying to draw them metaphorically, metaphysically. They were creating impressionistic art, in a sense, because they conveyed an idea, an essence, a story. Because it's the stories, like we talked about at the very beginning, that are that really kind of define our perception. C.K. Chesterton says, and you may have heard me say this before, but the most important story, the essence, because it's the thing that defines our perception, but it's also the thing that begins to create the relationships around us, is the question that is answered by this story: what kind of universe do you live in? Do you live in a universe that is void and is absence of any intelligence? Do you live in a universe that is generous and good and loving? Do you live in a universe that is critical and, draconian? What kind of universe? I was saying earlier, I grew up with a story that had nothing to do with a teaching about a God that I should be afraid of because he loved me. How do you love something that you are afraid of? And so sometimes it's important for us to sort of jettison the stories that worked and then they didn't work. Because sometimes a story can create incredible expansion. It has room for us to move and to grow and to go where we want to go. And sometimes they limit us. But a good story takes us through the disruptions of our life. William James, who is considered the father of modern psychology, and really one of the inspirations to the early new thought leaders of where we come from, says this. He says, most people live, whether physically, intellectually, or morally, in a very restricted circle of their potential being. They make use of a very small portion of their possible consciousness, and their soul's resources in general, much like a man who, out of his whole bodily organism, should get into the habit of using and moving only his little finger. Great emergencies and crises show us how much greater our vital resources are than we had ever supposed. So the question is, does our story create the opportunity to carry us through a disruption in our life? And what I want to offer is the essence of healing is disruption. The essence of growth is disruption. How we mature is through disruption. We live in a universe that is constantly in the experience of disruption. I could probably have a lovely glass of wine with my friend Joe there and talk about the origins of the universe and how disruptive it has been through its whole evolution from the Big Bang to this very moment. And so it's the essence of what is. We like to think that there's this great and perfect order of things. But what I want to offer is we live in an unfinished universe, which by that very statement means it's imperfect. It doesn't mean that it's not good or loving or whatever the case may be. It is evolving, it is waking up, it is doing all those kinds of things. And there are stories that invite us to consider that we are now part of the creation or the ongoing evolution of things. And that is certainly true for our planet today. Like it or not, for good or for ill, or whatever the case we want to say, is there is nothing on this planet today that is not contingent on us as human beings. We have dynamically changed the course of evolution on this planet by our very presence and what we do and how we go about doing those things. And so we might want to look, at the end of the day, the relationships that we create, the world in which we live in, and the world that we are making is all contingent on us. And what I would offer, it is from our own perception of these things, and that perception is mitigated by the stories we tell ourselves. And what I would want to say at the end of the day of that, the most important story is the story that we tell ourselves about what kind of universe do we live in. Now, as students of mental thought, what we know is we have a conscious and an unconscious. We have an objective and a subjective reality that we live in. Our objective reality is the one that is outside of us. Our subjective is the one that's inside of us. And what we have seen, what has been demonstrated to us time and time and time again, whether personally or collectively, is what is going on the subjective is manifesting itself on the objective. So Dr. Holmes could say something really pithy like, change your thinking, change your life. And that is true on the surface, but oh boy, if you think about the ramifications of that one. And let me just offer this at the very beginning of that too. And it's not just kind of, simply affirm something and be done with it. Sometimes it takes work because the patterns that are within our consciousness sometimes need effort, conscious, devoted engagement with ourself, engagement with really doing an inquiry about how we got to where we are based on what we thought we were doing, based on this idea of our own perception of how things are. You guys with me on this so far? So, that's kind of what we do. And to me, where this really comes down to it is in the stories that we tell ourselves collectively and individually. I heard somebody say something the other day. I don't know how I was reading this in my talk. I just want to make sure that I said it. Is that someone was saying, well, that person has to earn my respect. Have you ever heard someone say that? Please don't say, you've said that. Because no one has to earn your respect. If all humans are humans, their humanity is taken for granted. And it is for us to do the inner work to respect that humanity, whether we like it or not, whether it is comfortable or not. Because things like empathy and compassion take work. They just don't float down. And so again, it's how we tell and what we tell the stories too. And it comes down to what I want to offer is the beginning of hope. And that is reverence. And what do I mean by reverence? Paul Woodruff wrote a book. God, when did I read that book? It's like a decade ago or more. But it's just been re-released. And he says this, he says, reverence begins in a deep understanding of human limitations. Reverence begins with a deep understanding of human limitations. From this grows the capacity to be in awe of whatever we believe lies outside of our control. God, truth, justice, nature, even death. The capacity for awe, as it grows, brings with it the capacity for respecting fellow human beings, flaws and all. This in turn fosters the ability to be ashamed. There's a word we don't use in New Thought Centers. This in turn fosters the ability to be ashamed when we show moral flaws exceeding the normal human allotment, which means you get to be angry. You get to be disappointed. You get to be frustrated. You get to be all those kinds of things. But when your feelings therefore dehumanize the other one, that is called a moral flaw. That is the inner work. And so what he is saying here is the beginning of all of this is to be able to be in a place of amazement and wonder and awe. And what something Abraham Heschel would say is even surprise. Because what Heschel says is, he says there are two ways of knowing. One is through reason, and reason is essentially just reorganizing what we already know. There's no real novelty in reason, but in amazement and wonder and awe, it leads us to a place of surprise. It leads us to a place of insight. It leads us to a place of novelty, of newness, of things that go beyond that. And so, we want to stay flexible in our own mind, curious, not judgmental. We want to stay flexible so that we can be surprised, amazed by one thing or another. Daily, Heschel says, daily. He says if you're not surprised every day by something, you should really pay attention to that. Something has kind of calcified if things just kind of are the way that they are and where they go. Simone Weil, who is... Simone Weil, would you hand me my water, please, Craig? Or Lynn, or anybody? Thank you. Simone Weil, who was a philosopher in the 20th century, wrote a book called The Need for Roots. And she makes this remarkable claim in that book. She says that the human soul's most sacred need, is protection against suggestion and falsehood. So the greatest need that our soul has is the need for protection against falsehoods and suggestions. So I think there's a couple things in there that are worth just kind of unpacking for a second. I've been kind of thinking about this thought all week. The first is this, is that suggestions are often the work of tyrants. They plant a seed and then step back. I'm rewatching with Annie the second season of Rings of Power because, of course, I power watched it as soon as it was released, and now we're watching it together. And there's a really interesting thing in that story because the character personified as Sauron, the evil one, calls himself the giver of gifts. And what he does is he plants insidious little thoughts. Then he just steps back and lets them grow. But how true that is, right? How true that is about, in our common stories that we tell ourselves, and especially if we listen to the media of any form or another, or any political party for that matter, they're always dropping little suggestions, right? This person's a Russian agent, this person did this, that person is this, that person's not human. Whatever the case may be. And they're all lies, but then they just stand back. And then, in the Hebrew mythology, there is what is known as Satan. And and it's interesting because when you read the early Hebrew Bible, the personification of Satan is not evil. That doesn't come later. Actually, that doesn't really come until the Maccabee rebellion against the Greeks. But earlier, the character of Satan, his name was the accuser. That's what he did. He points fingers and said, see what that person did, see what that person did, see what that person does. And so it's really about planting these little seeds that then allow to fester and to grow. There's this wonderful African story. Perhaps you've heard it. Joseph Campbell tells the story. It's an African folk tale, and it's about these two guys that are working in the field, and the trickster shows up, and he has a hat. And the hat is like green on one side and red on the other side. And he puts the hat on and he walks down the row. And then what he does is he gets to the end of the row and then he turns the hat around and walks back, so that the person on the left sees red, the person on the right sees green, or whatever the case may be. And the one guy says to the other one, he says, did you see that guy walking down the field with a red hat? And the other guy goes, it wasn't a red hat, it was a green hat. And the other guy goes, no, it wasn't a green hat, it was a red hat. You're out of your mind. And they're going back and forth, and they're about to go to blows. And so they go to the tribal chief, to settle this argument. Was it a red hat or was it a green hat? And there they are, and they're ready to just fight it out. And finally the trickster shows up and he says, no, that was me. I did that. I turned the hat, because sowing discord is my favorite thing to do. Sowing discord is the favorite thing to do. Sowing discord is the prevalent story of our times. And as Aaron Simmons says, who's a philosopher that I really like these days, he says, standing for truth, for our humanity, requires us to stand against those who would ask for loyalty over honesty and applause over excellence. Being protected against such dangerous influences is the basic condition of then being able to develop the skills that make truth a priority. When our leaders lie, we are all brought low. And if you haven't heard, all our leaders lie. So where are we in all of this? First, we protect ourselves from this. And how do we protect ourselves from this? It is establishing relationships that are based on trust, on goodness. But it's also about creating or adapting a new story in our life. And sometimes, for myself, to me, I think the most important thing we can do is to cultivate our greatest superpower. And our greatest superpower is that ability to think symbolically. But what accelerates that, what arcanum really begins to enrich that, is something that is the most powerful thing that we have, which is our imagination. And, as you've heard me say, when we live in fear, when we live in anxiety, when we worry, our imagination flatlines. So always the work that we do is how to re-engage the imagination. And often, because we are symbolic thinkers, it is through the stories that we hear and the stories that you tell. And you may be saying to yourself right now, if you are paying attention, what you are talking about is escapism. Yeah, I am. I am talking about escapism. And you may be thinking that escapism is some sort of moral failure. It's a way to escape. But I would offer that escapism is sometimes the healthiest thing to do, and I will fall back on the blessed, may he be redeemed and praised forever, J.R. Tolkien, who wrote a book that was based on the imagination. And he says this. He says, why should a man be scorned if finding himself in prison, he tries to get out and go home? Or if when he cannot do so, he thinks and talks about other topics other than the jailers and prison walls? The world outside has not become less real because the prisoner cannot see it. In using escape in this way, the critics have chosen the wrong word. And what is more, they are confusing, not always by sincere error, the escape of the prisoner with the flight of the deserter. Do you see the difference? The escape of the prisoner or the flight of the deserter. Because often in our culture, it's not that we are trying to escape, we're trying to desert. It's not like we're not trying to create a new story, we're just not wanting to be there. So we make up these other kinds of things. And so what I would offer then is, what feeds your soul? What feeds your soul? And what I'm going to offer is this. Art feeds the soul. Because we are symbolic thinkers, the soul does not think in a linear way. The mind thinks through reason. The soul thinks through intuition. And intuition is nurtured by the imagination. And we feed the imagination through the stories that we tell. Back in 2014, Ursula Le Guin, y'all know Ursula Le Guin? Thank you. So, So I used to think one of the false beliefs, one of the false stories that I used to tell myself was that of the archetype of the orphan, that I'm always the outsider looking in. So when I tell, have you guys read this person? And you all look at me like, are you from this planet? Sometimes it makes me feel like I'm the outsider looking in. But thank you, Mari, for Ursula Le Guin, the Earthsea trilogy. You guys never read that? Oh my goodness gracious, Anyway, so Ursula Le Guin, she is a science fiction and fantasy writer, brilliant woman, and she won the National Award of Literature, which, by the way, she was the first science fiction writer to receive that award. And in her acceptance speech, she says a few things, but one of the things that she said in that speech is this. She said. And I was thinking of Lee when I originally heard, well, not when I originally heard this, because I originally heard this like in 2016 or 17, but recently. She writes this as part of the speech. She says, "Hard times are coming when we will be wanting the voices of writers," and I would say of artists, wanting the voices of writers who can see alternatives to how we live now, can see through our fear-stricken society and its obsessive technologies to other ways of being, and even imagine real grounds for hope. We'll need writers who can remember freedom, poets, visionaries, realists of a larger reality. Realists of a larger reality, one that's not just simply based on reason, but a reality that is based on amazement and wonder, which engenders this idea of hope. Because hope doesn't let us off the hook. Hope does just the opposite. It gets us engaged. It's the juice for the journey. Because it says something is good and it's worth me engaging because of that. Hope is almost like a verb, not a noun. It's not a thing. It's a way of being. And sometimes what that looks like are the stories that we tell ourselves. And so how are, Gracie Slick, 1960s, Surrealistic Pillow, White Rabbit. What's the essence of White Rabbit? Feed your mind. Feed your mind, right? Feed your mind. And so that's what we do. What feeds your mind? She continues to say at the end of this speech this. She says, books aren't just commodities. The profit motive is often in conflict with the aims of art. We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. But then, so did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted, changed by human beings. Resistance and change often begin in art. Very often, it is our art, the art of words, that creates change. And so, my dear friends, what stories feed your mind, engendering hope, engaging in a revolution that is as big and seems almost as impossible as the divine right of kings? And look what the imagination has done. Thank you.
Now I'm going to do sing along. All those beautiful words make me want to play one of my songs, but we got to sing along because that's part of the healing and the togetherness. So this is We Let Love Wash Over Us. We let love wash over us. We let it be. One more time. We let love wash over us. We let it be. We let hope. We let hope wash over us. We let it be. We let light. We let light wash over us. We let it be. Let it be. Let it be. Let it be. Yeah, let it be. Speaking words of wisdom. Let it be. We let joy. We let joy wash over us. We let it be. We let breath. We let breath wash over us. We let it be. Back to the Beatles here. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. We let love one more time. We let love wash over us. We let it be. Yeah, we do. Much love, everybody. So beautiful.
Thank you, Lee and Jim. I like how you weave those songs together.
That's the Spirit Hill original, but they were the first ones that I know of to do
Ah.
that. That's beautiful.
And I loved your song, too. And Reverend Guy, thank you. You really did have a lot of quotes. You did your own weaving there. And Kabir was a weaver, so it all fits together, doesn't it? All right. So it's our time of conscious giving, which, you know, it's really just an opportunity to take whatever awe and wonder and inspiration you've gathered today from the music, from Reverend Guy, from our fellowship, and let it flow through you. I remember when you did the book study about abundance, and that prayer I say every day, it's like, let me be an easy open conduit for your prosperity, the prosperity of the divine. So let us be that, and if you choose to give, just No, we are grateful. It comes from that really abundant spirit that is your very essence, and we thank you.
So yes, there are a couple of announcements that are coming down. So the first, and probably well, I don't know if they're most important, but it's a good one, is that next Sunday, we are doing a turkey luncheon for everyone, because perhaps you're for one reason or another, there's nobody to share Thanksgiving with, or whatever the case may be, and Thanksgiving is America's Passover. And so it's important to share the sacred meal. So we're going to do a turkey lunch, and Meredith is heading it up. And so if you would like to support her in bringing something of one form or another to celebrate the lunch and feed us all, talk to Meredith. She's the one in the red hat. And just like to say, look, I'll bring cranberries, or I'll bring mashed potatoes, or I'll bring whatever the case may be. And so that's happening. Jim has a class at 9 on Sunday mornings. Just right. 9 on Sunday mornings on the Tao and living. And so he'll be doing that. And he's actually going to be speaking December 1st. So mark your calendars for that one as well. Jim is just brilliant. If you've not sat in his class or heard him speak on the Sundays, it's a real treat. He's just brilliant and fun and good. So that's happening. Let's see. There's a board meeting this next Monday at 6 o'clock here at the center. It's at 6 o'clock here at the center. Yes, I'm reading it. Thank you very much. And anybody, one of the things that I'm very proud of our center is we really practice transparency. So if you ever want to know, if you ever want to look at our books, just make an appointment with Andrea and you can come look at the books. Our meetings are open. And so if you want to kind of know the goings-ons of our center, you are welcome to show up, and there's a board meeting there, and that's happening there. I also wanted to say, because I forgot, good morning to all those who are watching in the virtual world. I did not miss you. I just, sometimes I am. Usually I am. So but now what I want to do is I want to thank everybody. And first of all, I'll start with the greeters. We had, let's see, Dave was a greeter, Chris was a greeter. I know. I can give a good talk. I'm proud of the way that I speak. But after my talk, I'm kind of like Rain Man. So if you ask me anything, I just say, sure, why not? So Chris was a greeter. Who was greeting with you? I saw there was a third person. Was Mark up there? I saw Mark. Mark was there. Mark was everywhere today. So anyway, that was there. Steve and Mike back there in the sound booth making everything look good and sound good. Great job, you guys. Give a lot of love to Ann and Deanna and Kurt, who have been in the kitchen busily preparing a small feast, which we have most Sundays, so that's there too. All kinds of cool things in the gift shop. Do check that out. Paul, you rang the bell well today. Good job. And always it's a pleasure having you guys up here. Always a pleasure. Yeah. The Simon and Garfunkel of New Thought here. We have got that. And Craig, it's always a joy. Your poetry is always so inspirational. I look forward to that. And by the way, Craig, on the Sunday between Christmas and New Year's, we have a tradition where Craig does a poetry service, and it's always just beautiful. It's music and poetry. It's a lovely, lovely kind of thing. If I have forgotten anybody, it is only because of this is who I am. It's an opportunity for you to remember that I am human. Yes? Prayer circle. Thank you so much. Absolutely. So, not only prayer circle, but prayer. Yeah, welcome to church. Prayer. What a concept. So there are a lot of ways to pray in this place. and I could use them all. So there's a couple things. One is you can fill out a prayer request in the back there in the narthex, and the practitioners get together weekly and we pray, so you can do that. You can go to the prayer circle that Craig is going to hold at about 10 minutes after service in the Emerson room, and that's a beautiful prayer that the practitioner on the platform always does. You can grab one of the practitioners. Today I see Paul and Andrea and Craig, and just say, and Terry back there, and just say, do you have a moment for prayer? And their answer, I promise you, will be yes, and they will pray with you. Or you can make an appointment with any of them, or for myself, if you would like spiritual counseling in one way or the other. So we have lots of ways for you to pray today. So please, if your heart's been touched, do not leave without prayer. I think I did it. Good job. Thanks. So with that, let us pray away the day to the next adventure. And so just quietly repeat this to yourself. There is beauty before me. Or you can say it out loud if you want to. There is beauty before me. There is beauty behind me. There is beauty to my left. There is beauty to my right. There is beauty above me. There is beauty below me. I am on the pollen path, the path of life, vitality, and good. And this is where you guys stop. And so, may your day be filled with amazement and wonder and awe. May each and every one of us be surprised. And may that surprise bring us to reverence. And may that reverence call us to action. And may that action create a world that works for all beings. May it be so. And so it is.
All right, there's one of my own sing-alongs here. The chorus goes, anyone under the sun, anyone under the moon, I send my love out to you. I hope you feel some loving soon. You'll try that? Anyone under the sun, anyone under the sun, anyone under the moon, anyone under the moon, I send my love out to you. I hope you feel some loving soon. I hope you feel some loving soon. There's an ancient fear creeping here. There's an air of yesteryear. It may never disappear. Let's draw these lines so very clear. Here we go. Anyone under the sun, anyone under the moon, I send my love out to you. I hope you feel some loving soon. They know just how to make us fight. Our evolution's black and white. The truth is where you shine your light, so we can see who has the right. Here we go. Anyone under the sun, anyone under the moon, I send my love out to you. I hope you feel some loving soon. They say we got these separate ways, then you watch how power plays. Now all I know and all I see is I am you and you are me. Anyone under the sun, anyone under the moon, I send my love out to you. I hope you feel some loving soon. One more time real loud. Anyone under the sun, anyone under the moon, I send my love out to you. I hope y'all feel some loving soon. So beautiful, everyone. Happy Sunday. Go spread that cheer. Much love.